Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to the Game Time Astrology Podcast. I'm your host, Kula Ray, the astrologer. So let's go ahead and talk about LeBron James. Welcome to episode number 4, where we're going to be talking about where LeBron James should play next. Okay, so there are two specific cities that have been in the media on ESPN. Different YouTubers have been talking about it as well. And these two cities that I'm going to be discussing in this podcast today are Dallas, so the Dallas Mavericks NBA team, and New York, the New York Knicks. So I did a deep dive. I did my research before I went on ahead and press record on this episode. And of course, as always, when I'm analyzing astrocartography, I have to look and see how the person's chart is, how their natal chart is, not the astrocartography chart. I'm just not going to go in and just start picking places. I have to go and look at, or I should say rather, I had to go and look at LeBron James's placements in his natal chart. And so what I noticed was his strongest lines are Saturn, Uranus, Pluto, Neptune, and Jupiter. Okay, in that order: Saturn, Uranus, Pluto, Neptune, and Jupiter. Okay, and I narrowed it down as well to the best places for him to play. Honestly, out of those two cities would be New York. And I'm going to go into in-depth detail as to why I feel that way. The second best place is where he's at currently right now, Los Angeles Lakers. Dallas, on the other hand, not great, not the best place for him to be traded to. And I'll also go into why that is at the end. But I know you guys are going to want to hear more about, like, why are you saying New York, Q? Well, let's go ahead and jump into that. So in New York City, what I saw was that he actually has two of those strong power lines that I spoke about. So because Neptune and also Pluto is strong in his chart, Neptune really not so much. I mean, it's in its fall, but the fact of the matter is it's not disharmonious or anything like that. So I don't really mind it too much. And plus, he was playing on a Neptune line in Cleveland, and he actually won a championship there, right? So he won there quite a few times, right? So in that regard, Neptune, the planet in his chart, not too shabby. So he also has Pluto in a trine to the midheaven in New York City. So playing for the Knicks would actually really transform his career if he decided to continue to play, which I'm sure he will. It would really transform his career into like a death of the old and a rebirth of the new. There's a lot going on too in New York City. I mean, not only does he have a Neptune conjunct descendant line, which is the same line in Ohio that he has, but he also has Mars in a trine to the ascendant. And, you know, he has his Mars in Pisces in the 10th house. I believe Neptune, let me go back and look at his chart. Neptune is in the 8th house, okay? And then he has Sun in a sextile to the midheaven. He has a Sun in the 8th house in Capricorn. And then he has Pluto in a trine to the midheaven. And Pluto is in the 6th house in the sign of Scorpio, right? So why am I saying like New York is going to be the place to be? Well, here's the thing. If he possibly could win another championship, I think out of all two of those cities that we mentioned, like Dallas, New York, that's going to be the strongest place. And I'll tell you why. Okay. So it's first starting with Neptune conjunct the descendant, because the Neptune line is the closest line to New York City for him. So that's going to be the strongest influence in that particular place for him. Okay. So with that being said, he has, again, his Neptune is in the 8th house and the descendant is Sagittarius. Okay. So his ascendant is in Sagittarius and Neptune is in a conjunction to the descendant in his chart. Neptune is at 1 degrees Capricorn and the descendant is at 26 degrees Sagittarius. So what does this mean? Well, here's the thing. With Neptune in the 8th house, I mean, the 8th house rules our shared resources, and it can also make you like a very fluid athlete, okay? It can make you an athlete that's really going to like transcend, really be like a beacon of hope. You know, people are gonna like. I think it'll also change um, his public perception right now in the media. Right now in the media, it's not looking too good for him because he's sticking around, and people feel like he's bringing down the Lakers franchise by sticking around and then bringing his son in as well. People thought that, you know, that was just like clownery and buffoonery at its finest. And so basically, you know, living in New York, what could tend to happen here is, you know, people will idolize him just like they did when he first came to the league and played for the Cleveland Cavaliers. It'll kind of be like a reversal, or like traveling back in time 22 years ago, right? That's going to be kind of like the vibe if he were to play for the New York Knicks, right? Um, you know, he'll have very high expectations of himself in New York as well, and so will the public, because Neptune is like ruling pretty much us, the public, because it's an outer planet. It's not an inner planet. It's not close to him, to his person, to his body. It's an outer planet. And with it in conjunction to the descendant is also the seventh house of one-to-one relationships, partnerships, business partnerships, marriage, all these things. And so what could also happen too is that his, you know, relationships, good contract, he would probably sign like a really good deal there. Okay, pretty good deal. Not, I won't say really good deal. I would say pretty good. It'll be pretty good because Pluto is also influencing New York City, and Pluto literally rules, you know, income from another resource, right? And with Pluto in a sextile to the midheaven, I mean, that's chef's kiss. If I saw a Neptune by itself in New York, I would be concerned about the money he would make. He would probably take a pay cut. But I feel like if he goes to New York, because Pluto is there influencing, and so is the sun, and the sun is in the eighth house, Neptune is in the eighth house, um, Pluto is in the sixth house of work and day to day. I feel like he would get like a pretty nice contract. And you know, there's also reports that New York Knicks always wanted him to play there, and I really think that he could probably really like turn his career around, and you know, likely, you know, like I said, do like a Benjamin Button effect, where it's like we're looking at LeBron now, like we're back to idolizing him, playing for the New York Knicks, this kind of thing. So I really feel like it would definitely benefit him to play in New York. And then we also go to the Mars aspect. So he has Mars and Pisces in the 10th house, and it's in a trine to the ascendant in the astrocartography chart. And this is a line that is pretty close as well, very close. Okay. And so this would actually make him interesting to other people. Okay. Very much so interesting to other people. Again, like I said, that whole Benjamin Button effect, where we'll be feeling like, oh, this is LeBron from 22 years ago. It would be like very nostalgic feeling. It would, because I feel like he would be playing too at a level that will remind us of how great he is, you know, as opposed to right now, like LA, it's not looking so good, how people are looking at him. But as I said before in my last video about LeBron, I mean, this guy, the longer he stays in the league, I mean, it's just written in the stars that he is going to receive a lot of criticism and people aren't going to look at him the same way. But I do think that New York could kind of shift the narrative in a positive way for him if he were to go there and play, because there's a lot of positivity just like through and through. A lot of these power lines, like I said, Neptune is one of the strongest. And then we have Mars here. Mars in the trine to the ascendant on the astrocartography chart. But in the chart itself, Mars is in a square to Chiron. So this is something that will be activated. This is a aspect that will be activated, this Mars in a square to Chiron. And so basically what that means is that he has Chiron in Gemini in the first house, okay? And so having Chiron and Gemini in the first house isn't bad. It just makes you like, you have a wound about your physical appearance. So you really work on it. You really like want to make sure it's in tip top shape. That's why LeBron is in tip top shape. And so with Mars in a conflictual tension with Chiron, the wounded healer, or where our triggers lie, it's like taking action on his career, it could trigger his self-image a little bit in New York. Like he may not necessarily like being in New York City is what I'm trying to say. It may not necessarily like fit his vibe, if you will. I think that the cold weather could probably get to him a little bit, and just like it being like just a lot going on. It's a very fast-paced city. I think that could kind of rattle him a little bit, um, because he has his Mars in Pisces, and they always talk about like why does LeBron like walk off the court in certain games, especially when he loses, but then when he wins, like he's there talking. Well, because he has a Mars in Pisces, and Pisces doesn't like to really be seen that much. But because Mars in Pisces is in his 10th house, he has no choice but to be seen in this lifetime. So I think that with in Mars and Pisces in a square to Chiron in the first house, so it's a 10th house, first house square. It's like, you know, really not wanting to be out very much like that. It just, I think it would just be like kind of a shock to his system, to his body, but not really a shock to his career. I really don't see that happening because, again, Mars, that's the only negative aspect in the chart to Mars is the square to Chiron. So it's not like horrible. And the fact too that Pluto is trining the midheaven and Mars in his chart is conjunct the midheaven, Pluto is actually supporting Mars in this aspect, right? It's actually giving Mars a boost. Like, okay, you may not like the weather, you may not like certain things about New York, but Pluto is still going to do its thing and transform his day to day, and his health routines as well could transform for the better as well. I mean, he's already good, he's already in tip top shape. It's no problem, right? Then we move on to the sun in a sextile to the midheaven. Again, the midheaven is Pisces. His sun is in Capricorn in the 8th house. So a 10th house, 8th house sextile. And so, again, another amazing aspect for playing with the New York Knicks. I mean, I really feel like he should definitely, if he were to be traded and go anywhere, it needs to be New York. I'm telling you, like, that's where it's going to be. Like, because he plays well at the Garden as well. And this is one of the reasons why the New York Knicks franchise always wanted him to suit up in a Knicks jersey XYZ, right? And then he would make a lot of money there too. Because when you have, number one, if we even talk about Pluto trine the midheaven, it's going to transform his career in a really positive way. Because again, like I said, Pluto is one of his strongest planets in the chart. Therefore, it translates to one of his strongest power lines in astrocartography. And so he would feel powerful. He would gain a lot of money. Like I said, he won't really, I don't think, take a pay cut. Not necessarily. I mean, he could. There is a possibility of that because Neptune conjunct the descendant is in the picture here. But even if he takes a pay cut, he would still feel powerful. Like, one of them ones. He would be the number 2 option, if anything. He won't have to settle for being the number 3 option, which I don't think that's what LeBron wants. He doesn't want to be the number 3 option. I mean, anywhere LeBron goes, he's going to stand out. Point blank, period. And I think that he would have a better chance in New York to stand out, make a ton of money, really transform his legacy in a way that shows that, he is a top 5 player. I think it will really shift the narrative. Like I said before, if he were to play for the New York Knicks, it would shift the narrative back to him being a top 5 player, and, no more of the flopping antics and XYZ. I mean, I hope he would stop doing that in New York. So that's New York, okay? And let's go ahead to Dallas now. So in Dallas Mavericks, this was another city that came up all across ESPN. Commentators have talked about it. And I would say no. And here's the reason why. So the thing about Dallas is there's a Mars square ascendant power line here, and it is the closest power line to him. So with Mars square ascendant, not good because, as I mentioned before, in the natal chart, he has Mars square the first house. Mars square Chiron, and Chiron is in the first house in Gemini. So he's a Gemini rising. And then he has one of his detrimental planets in Dallas, which is Mercury, and because he has Mercury in Sagittarius, and so Mercury in Sagittarius is in his detriment. Okay, it is kind of okay because the ruler of Mercury is in the eighth house. However, Jupiter, which is the ruler of Sagittarius, is in the sign of Capricorn for him. And although Jupiter is unaspected, the fact of the matter is Jupiter in Capricorn is in its fall position. So it can make things a little bit tricky for him in Dallas. Specifically when it comes to just the way he's going to be moving and like talking to the media and stuff like that. I mean, it can make him more of an enemy more than he is now to the media and his legacy, right? It's just not a good look. I mean, even though it's Mercury sextile midheaven here, and then he has Uranus. Uranus is one of the strongest power lines in his astrocartography chart, and in his natal chart, Uranus is a powerful planet. It's still a little shaky because of the Mars square and also Mercury as well, because Mercury is, you know, it's in his detriment in the sign of Sagittarius. So it's literally like he has three things working against him here in Dallas. Number one, Mars is in a square to Chiron, and also Mars is square the ascendant. And then we have Mercury here, which is one of his weaker planets in the chart. And therefore, it translates to making it a weak planetary line in the astrocartography chart. Okay. Now, he also has, like I said, Uranus in a sextile to the midheaven. That's the second closest line to Dallas. And like I said, with Uranus in a sextile to the midheaven, it could also like help his career in a way, but honestly, there's too many cons than there are pros in this aspect because like I said, with the Mars square and also Mercury, it's just not really a good look, I would say. If I go like more into depth about that, you know, the Mercury line is good for like investigation and thinking and stuff like that, but I mean, when it comes to him, I just kind of feel like with Mercury conjunct Uranus in his chart as well, like it could create hostilities and like the things that he says. Um, he would also have to be mindful of like accidents, like car accidents and stuff like that. It's just honestly, it's not really a safe place for him to live long term and play there. Um, I mean, I just don't see it. I just don't see it for him in Dallas. And then with that Mars square the ascendant, I mean, I really just feel like he would really have to be careful with like short distance travel there, just like him like driving there, like driving home, stuff like that. It's just not this is not the best place for him. The other thing too is as I'm looking at this, yeah, I just kind of feel like yeah, I just really feel as though it's not safe. So therefore, it's not safe for his career because you have to be healthy and all these things, and it's just like I'm just not seeing it. I'm just not seeing it for him here. Um, Now, I will say, like I said, with Mercury in Sagittarius and its ruler Jupiter in Capricorn in the fall placed in the eighth house, this creates tension between like expansion and restriction. So he might not even feel like he can expand there, like he can grow his career there, like he would kind of feel like a little bit stifled, I feel. Um, like he would probably feel like he can't like speak freely. Like I'm just trying to say he wouldn't feel like himself. Okay. So definitely would not be a good place for him to play at as well. There's just too many things that are just not great about this place. And then also in Dallas, he has the moon in a sextile to the midheaven. So he has his moon in Aries in the 11th house. It's in the sextile to the midheaven. So what this could bring is just like fun times with friends and stuff like that. But again, like he would have to be mindful of like going out in Dallas, like being mindful of car accidents and people driving and just accidents in general. So that doesn't seem very safe either. Okay. So that's Dallas. I mean, in a nutshell, it's funny how the 3D world looks at people and sports figures, but the real science is Dallas is not a good look. It doesn't matter if Kyrie is there, and it doesn't matter if AD is there. It's not a good place for him. It works for other people. It's not going to work for him, right? New York Knicks is where it's at. Now, let's go ahead and go to LA, Los Angeles Lakers. Let's see what that location is like for him. Now, as we talk about the Los Angeles Lakers, he currently resides in LA, and I see why. Like, number one, the strongest planet in his chart is Saturn. He is a Capricorn, and Saturn rules Capricorn, and Saturn is in his sixth house, and it's gorgeous. It's in the sixth house, and it's doing its thing. It's in a house that enjoys work, and Saturn, Capricorn energy enjoys working and working hard. And so take that element as well. But like I said, Saturn in his natal chart is strong. Therefore, if he lives on a Saturn line, he would have a good experience. So Saturn is in a sextile to the midheaven. And so this is going to kind of speak to why it's been like really hard and arduous for him to like win another championship in Los Angeles, right? Even though Saturn in his chart is great, but like I said, Saturn rules time and delays and restrictions and power. So it took him a lot of time. Like he came to LA in I think 2018, and then 2 years later, he won an NBA title in 2020 in the bubble. And that was when Jupiter, Pluto, and I believe Saturn were in a conjunction. And that was during COVID, right? And all three of those planets were in a conjunction in his sun sign, Capricorn, in the eighth house. So he had a conjunction in Capricorn in 2020. And, it was like a Jupiter return for him, Jupiter in Capricorn. So it gave him a lot of luck to win that 2020 championship because he was going through a Jupiter return. And Jupiter return pretty much means the transit Jupiter is transiting your natal Jupiter. It's going to be in that same sign, and it's going to be on top of your Jupiter, really expanding you, really, giving you a lot of good luck and abundance and good fortune. That is why he won in 2020. Also, Pluto was there as well, transforming, you know, the Jupiter placement and the sun and everything like that, like making him feel really good and powerful, like he could win, and giving him the energy and the gusto to do it. And then Saturn was there too, like Saturn was in Capricorn, I believe, as well during pandemic times. Because I remember it was the Great Conjunction. It was 3 planets. And now, you know, I also want to look at too Saturn. I do know too that transit Saturn right now is squaring his first house and his seventh house. So that's also a major blockage. And so we know that, right? So that's point number 1. Point number 2 is Saturn sextile the midheaven, even though like, you know, it's great or what have you. Let me look at the aspects again here. Let me look at the aspect grid. The thing is, Saturn is opposing his North Node. Okay. Saturn is opposing the North Node. And I feel like that's the thing here, with Saturn opposing his North Node, it's like literally it's opposing his destiny and his fate. It's not a faithful place for him to stay in LA. It's not destined for him to win another championship in LA. It's just not going to happen because natal Saturn is opposing the North Node. Now I know you might say, well, hey Q, then why did he win in 2020? Well, like I said, he was going through a Jupiter return. A stellium, a transiting stellium was sitting on top of his sun sign, his Jupiter sign, his Neptune. Okay. And then he was going through literally a Jupiter return, which is a lucky point in life when you get a lot of massive luck in that house, in the eighth house of shared resources. So, he made a lot of money. You win a championship, you make a lot of money, those kinds of things. And Jupiter was just pretty much on his side in 2020. And then when Jupiter left, of course, and went to Leo and so forth and so on, and Virgo and Libra and yada, yada, yada. Now, when Jupiter left Capricorn and that, Saturn left Capricorn and Pluto left Capricorn, Pluto took a lot longer to leave Capricorn. But my point is, LA is not a destined place for him to win a championship. So it does make sense why people want him to leave, because they can see it. They don't even have to look at a chart. They can sense it. It's not going to happen because it hasn't happened again in 5 years. And it's unfortunate. And the reason why, I know you're saying well, you just said Saturn was the strongest line. It is. But the other problem with Los Angeles, this location, is that the moon's nodes line is here. Moon's nodes is in a trine to the midheaven. But the moon's nodes, meaning the north and the south node, are squaring Venus, I believe. Let me look at it again and make sure. So, yes, so Venus is square his north and his south node. And what does Venus rule? It rules harmony. There's no harmony anymore with this town, with the Lakers, with Los Angeles. There's no harmony. There really hasn't been until he won the championship. Things got a little better, but then we started to see a decline. His playoff record is 2-12 or something like that. He's been knocked out of the first round the last 2 years, got knocked out of the Western Conference Finals. It's just not going to work. It's not going to work out. Now, let's say hypothetically the moon's nose line wasn't here and he was only dealing with the Saturn line. Then, yeah, I could see him winning another championship. But I really feel like the blockage here is that moon's nodes line. Even though it's harmonious or what have you, there's other things happening. And what I mean by that is there's other things happening in the transits. And those things are, like I said in the last episode, he's dealing with transit Pluto square his natal Pluto. He's dealing with transit Saturn square his first house and his seventh house. He's dealing with transit Neptune square his natal Neptune. I mean, there's so many things. This is a midlife crisis type situation. And, it'll just really be in his best interest if he just kind of lets Luka be the face of the Los Angeles Lakers, because if he stays there, he's just going to really kind of overshadow Luka. And I think that's where a lot of people are kind of pissed off and really not liking that and wanting him to leave, because they really want Luka to take over, and they're just kind of tired of LeBron not bringing any more championships to LA, because he's not going to. and just go to New York out of those two places that people keep talking about. Now, I don't know if they're saying these two places because this is what Clutch Sports is alluding to. I'm not sure. I don't really go too deep into it. I just kind of listen to ESPN and what I hear. But if those are the two places, then New York is where it's at. But that's it, guys. I'm going to leave it here. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. I will see you guys in the next podcast episode. Until next time, peace.